Hey friends, Tamie M. Joyce here, Empowerment Life Coach. And what I want to talk to you about today is inverted narcissism. More specifically, inverted narcissist traits. Have you ever heard of the term inverted narcissism? You might be shocked and surprised by what you learn in today's video. I know I sure was when I was first diving into understanding this particular flavor of destructive narcissism. Fascinating stuff, I tell you. Before we begin this video, however, I just want to quickly announce that I have a few spots available in my calendar this week for the free one-to-one consult with me to see if we'd be a good fit for working together in my 8-week transformational coaching program, the Freedom Class. So if that's of interest to you, be sure to check out the links in the description below where you can apply to see if you qualify for a free one-on-one consultation. And with that, let's get started. For the best advice on how to heal and recover from codependency and narcissistic abuse, subscribe to my channel and hit that bell to be sure to be notified when I post new videos throughout the week. So let's talk about inverted narcissist traits. First and foremost, inverted narcissism is actually a made-up term. It's not an official term. You're not going to find this in the DSM-5. It's not one of the big 5 in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of the American Psychiatric Association, right? It is fully a made-up term, however, very, very appropriate for one particular kind of destructive narcissist that I've certainly encountered many, many times in my life. And I'm going to tell you, I was so thrilled when I finally came across this information describing in detail this particular flavor of destructive narcissism, because this individual that I have encountered repeatedly in my life often left me scratching my head. They don't show up and present as your classic high spectrum destructive narcissist. There's a few slight different twists involved with this particular version, but if you get close enough and spend enough time with them and have enough experiences with them, you'll soon discover, without question, that you're dealing with a fully empathy deficient, conscienceless, entitled individual. Again, they just present differently than your classic narcissist. So like I said, it's a made-up term, but in my opinion, very, very appropriate for this one particular flavor of destructive narcissism. So fundamentally, what inverted narcissism describes is a codependent, covert narcissist who really gets their own version of narcissistic supply, gets their hit, their fix, their kicks off of the power dynamic from being involved with a more overt, grandiose, alpha dominant narcissist. So the inverted narcissist is in a lot of ways the mirror reflection to the overt alpha dominant grandiose narcissist, right? Like they're like two pieces of a puzzle that fit in this really sick dynamic if you have a close look at it, to be honest with you. But they're like two pieces of a puzzle because the overt, grandiose, alpha dominant narcissist serves the needs in a very sick, twisted, distorted way for the inverted narcissist, the covert, codependent narcissist. So the covert, codependent narcissist, the inverted narcissist, is really only interested in seeking out relationships with a far more dominant alpha grandiose narcissist for a number of reasons, not least of which they feel that by aligning themselves with this more dominant alpha narcissist, they're actually compensating for their own shortcomings and absolute runaway low self-esteem. They're socially propped up. Their self-image is improved and enhanced somehow by aligning themselves with this dominant alpha more overt, grandiose narcissist, right? So that's the kind of relationship that they're interested in only because the power dynamics at play between these two varieties of destructive narcissist, these two different flavors of destructive narcissism, that power dynamic that goes on is actually how the inverted narcissist gets their version of narcissistic supply, gets their hit, their fix. So let's talk traits, personality traits. This particular type of narcissist, the inverted narcissist, isn't always easy to spot, right? Like they can be a little tricky to pin down in terms of who and what exactly it is that you're dealing with. Now, part of the reason for that is they don't show up like your classic narcissist, right? They show up in a way that is often shy and reserved, often publicly very self-effacing, like they're really all about putting themselves down. They are big time in victimization mode. No matter what has gone on in their life, they always land on the victim side of things. When we're talking about your classic destructive narcissists, those that most of us tend to, recognize more readily, more quickly, they either land on the victim side or the hero side, right? When we're talking about the inverted narcissist, they're always the victim, even when they're the authors of their own misfortune, right? Even though they're the ones who are creating the circumstances that put them in a situation where, oh, woe is me, even though they perpetuate the circumstances that put them in the situation of, oh, woe is me, they are always and forever the victim in every situation, in every circumstance, no matter what, guaranteed. So, again, they can show up rather shy and reserved at first. First clue, first red flag will be this is someone who is definitely self-defacing. They're tending to criticize and demean and diminish themselves publicly, quite readily, quite openly. It seems to be their comfort zone. And there's a big neon sign over their head letting you know what a victim they are to all of life's circumstances, not least of which those that they have created for themselves. They are also hypersensitive, emotionally very fragile, and very childish. These are the folks who communicate in a very passive aggressive way, right? They tend to sulk and pout and sigh. You're dealing with emotional toddlers at best, no matter how old they are. They're also pathologically envious. Just like your garden variety classic destructive narcissist, pathological envy seems to be one of the traits. These folks, however, have zero capacity to generate any sense of self-worth or self-esteem from within. Any sort of I feel good about myself, I can acknowledge any value has to come from the outside. All of their sense of self, identity, and self-worth is derived from external sources, external validation, external approval. In particular, from the alpha dominant narcissist that they tend to be enmeshed with. Now, we know how inconsistent that can be. So you can imagine the aggressive and passive aggressive power dynamics that would go on between two folks of that ilk and that nature. In other words, they're a very cowardly, covert narcissist who need the big boss, dominant narcissist to give them any sense of self, any identity, etc. Right? They literally get their hit, their fix, their narcissistic supply needs met through the big boss, dominant narcissist. The power dynamics that go on between the two of them. They're the great champion enablers, protecting, defending, enabling, serving, supporting the big boss dominant narcissist. They accept their position as inferior and subordinate without question. Again, because there's a payoff that goes on between the two of them. So they're quite happy to be subordinate to the big boss dominant narcissist in order to have their sense of self propped up, their image enhanced, as I said. With that said, in that position of subordination, they're playing their own games, pulling their own strings, and doing their own passive aggressive, subtle, under the radar, manipulative nonsense to control and manipulate the big boss dominant narcissist. They're just not as out there with it. They're a whole lot more sneaky, subtle. Think Stepford Wife, and you've pretty much got the picture. You know, the individual who works overtime, making it all look good, making it all appear to be, you know, the image that she typically and the big boss dominant narcissist want to project. The big boss dominant narcissist can be abusive and vile as all get out, including to their own children, and the covert inverted narcissist enables all of that behavior because she's getting the payoff, right? So it's a really interesting dynamic going on between the two, and literally like two pieces of a puzzle that fit together. The inverted narcissist is a lot harder to recognize up front. They're a whole lot sneakier about it. They're really adept at making it all look good and coming across as very meek and shy and docile and charming, but really underneath the surface, there's all kinds of nonsense going on. And to add insult to injury, they're propping up the alpha dominant narcissist, enabling them, protecting them, defending them in all of their horrific behavior, whoever they happen to be targeting inside or outside of the family. Now, comment below and let me know whether or not you've encountered anyone in your life with these particular traits, the inverted narcissist traits. And if so, who were they? Now, the important thing to know about these people is no matter what they say to the contrary, the truth is they actually have no desire to heal from codependency or anything else that is going on in their life historically or presently. They have no desire to break free from what is undoubtedly a very sick, toxic dynamic that they have going on with their alpha dominant, destructive narcissist that they're enmeshed with, right? They may say that they do, but in truth, they don't. They're really just paying lip service because underneath it all, their very sick abandonment needs and many other needs are getting met in this dysfunctional power play between the two. So although they may say they want help and they may pay lip service to actually doing the work, you'll notice that over time, it's a lot of lip service with zero follow through, little to no follow through. They aren't serious or genuine about making any changes in their lives. This dysfunctional dynamic with the alpha, more overt, more dominant narcissist, the big boss narcissist, really serves them in ways that they aren't interested to break free from long term, quite frankly. And the other thing is, when we're talking about the more alpha, overt, destructive narcissist, one of the tendencies that that individual has is to throw just about anybody, if not anybody, under the bus. They'll throw anybody under the bus in order to protect their image, make their point, get their way, whatever it is in the moment, whatever their agenda happens to be in the moment. Well, the inverted narcissist is a little bit different in this regard. They don't throw anyone under the bus for themselves. They throw anyone under the bus in order to protect, defend, enable their big boss narcissist, the alpha dominant narcissist in their life, right? So they're all about making sure that the big boss narcissist gets their needs met. And that's how the inverted narcissist gets their source of supply. One of the ways that they get their hit, their fix, their source of supply, right? By serving the needs of the big boss, the alpha dominant narcissist. So what it boils down to is an inverted narcissist is a very cowardly, covert narcissist. All narcissists are codependent. Inverted narcissists are next level. All narcissists are manipulative. Inverted narcissists are next level. They're just a whole lot sneakier about it. They're a whole lot more passive aggressive, and they actually need the big boss dominant narcissist in order to have any sense of self, any identity at all. They actually have to have this very dominant narcissist, this very alpha narcissist in their life. And, you know, the game goes on, right? So my friends, I hope you got some value out of that today. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share it with your friends. And once again, I have a few spots available for a private one-on-one, a free one-on-one consultation with me to see if we're a good fit for working together in my 8-week transformational coaching program, the Freedom Class. So if that's of interest to you, the links are in the description below. And with that, I'm going to call it a wrap. As always, know your value and unlock your freedom. Bye for now.